Hi and welcome to Ask GMBN Tech. This is the weekly Q&A session. You ask us questions, I forgot what I was going to say there, and we'll hopefully give you some answers to help you out with your tech-related problems. Could be anything about lubing a chain to doing a lower leg service on your fork, or anything else for that matter. Get involved, use the hashtag AskGMBNTech, and don't forget to hit that subscribe and tell your friends about us as well. If you've got friends that ride bikes that could do with looking after their bikes, hey, it's free information at the end of the day, so thanks for watching in advance. First question is from Jack, who says, what are the best methods for rust prevention on the chain? How much rust is worrisome rust on the chain? Thank you for the show, it's a big help setup. Okay, so unless you treat your bike really badly, most rust that you're likely to find on the chain will just be surface rust and it will come off. So you don't have to worry too much about it unless you leave your bike outside for extended periods of time, i.e. days on end. So the first thing you need to do is make sure your chain and cassette is all nice and clean. I don't mean just give it a wipe. You want to do a proper deep clean. Use a chain cleaner. That could come in the form of a specific chain cleaning product, or you could use any form of degreaser. Either way, you want to make sure that all the stuff is out of the chain, all the gunk, all the bad stuff, and then apply some fresh lubricant. And the more lubricated your chain is, within reason, the safer it is going to be because most lubricants have corrosion inhibitors as part of them. So if you're running your chain dry in wet conditions, you're going to attract surface rust on there. Now, the second option here, well, not really an option, the second thing you need to take into account is when you're cleaning your bike, you have to make sure that you get all the moisture away from your bike. Flush it completely out. You can get water displacers for this. There are loads of different options on the market. We use Bike Protect from Muck-Off, but you can also use MO94, which is a lubricant as well, but it's also a water displacer and a corrosion inhibitor. Both those products are fine. Of course, there's various other brands on the market like the classic WD-40 and all sorts of other stuff out there. But all of these things, they're not lubricants. Well, they have got lubricating properties, but don't use them as a lube. You just use them to get the water out of the chain and then make sure it's fully dry, then you apply your lubricant. So water displacer is your friend for mountain biking. The last option, of course, is using a proper corrosion barrier. So I have got one here. This one is HCB1, which I've got to say, I haven't had much opportunity to use it yet. I only got this just as summer kicked in. But this winter, I suspect I'm going to give this a good old beasting on the bike. It's a proper hardcore barrier to put on your chain, and it's really for riders like myself that live in the northern hemisphere that ride in wet conditions, probably a bit more than we ride in dry conditions. If that sounds like you, then maybe you want to consider a product like that. Of course, a product like that is probably going to keep all the stuff on your chain more, which is great, but it also means gunk and sort of muck can build up, so you're going to be responsible for cleaning your chain a bit more, but you will have that barrier to protect it against corrosion. Next up from Jeffrey Williams. I've noticed that Doddy has his bikes hung up by the rear wheels in the workshop. Is one wheel better than the other when hanging up a bike? No, either is fine. So I hang mine by the rear wheel because I take the front wheels off. Now, a complete bike will fit vertically in my workshop, but it sticks out to the room quite a lot and it is quite a small room. So to maximise space, I'll take the front wheel off, flip the bike upside down, turn the bars sideways, and I use a toe clip strap to hold the bars in place there. Put the wheel next to it at the side at the bottom and slot the bike in. And that way, it's just a little bit more space I get back. Also compress my dropper seat post as well, so the seats aren't sticking out in the room, because obviously I have my saddles quite high. The only thing you've got to bear in mind, however you store your bike, whether it's stored on two wheels or up on either end, is the longer you store your bike for, the more you're going to have to look after the bike to get it back into riding condition. Now, for a few days at a time, no problems at all. But if you don't ride your bike for a few months, you might find, for example, if your dropper post is down, it gets a bit sticky. It's because it's designed to be used. Just like your suspension and telescopic forks, they're designed, in use, they will lubricate themselves. Yeah, so if they're not being used, that lubricating oil will run to the bottom of the fork or, you know, the seat post or whatever else you're talking about here. So you'll need to sort of cycle it through its sort of action a few times in order to get it working again, and maybe just give them a little bit of TLC. But generally speaking, if you've got more than, you know, a couple of bikes and you do probably, I'm guessing, ride one bike more than the others, you will have to pay a bit more attention to the ones you don't ride. Even if it means you're not going to ride it, just take it down from your workshop wall, give it a bit of love, and then put it back up again. And you'll find the tyre pressures over time might drop a bit as well. So good idea to avoid them perishing, just to keep them topped up. And that goes with any storage, you know, whether you're storing them in a unit, a workshop, whatever. It's just good practice, I think. Next up is from Graham, who says, Are there any setup changes that can be made to improve riding in sandy conditions as it's so dry? Well, I guess tyre pattern, tyre pressure is a huge one because of your ground spread. A hard tyre is going to cut through stuff more and you might slide around, whereas a softer tyre in theory gives you more ground surface there, so like basically trying to simulate what a fat bike tyre would do to give you the most amount of ground coverage possible. In terms of looking after your bike, a dry lube you would want to make sure you have on there. If you have a wet lube, which is suitable for wet winter conditions, it's just going to attract all that stuff and you're just going to have this grindy, gritty chain that you're literally just wearing out as you're riding with it. You could, of course, wax the chain if that's the major conditions that you ride in. I don't know, I don't change too much on my bike for dry conditions. I'll use a dry lube on the chain and I'll mess around with tyre pressure. I pretty much run the same tyres most of the year round. If there's like extreme wet conditions, I might be inclined to go for a tyre to suit that. And let's face it, don't really get extreme dry conditions that much in the UK, but you know, in the best conditions like that, I might change my rear tyre for something faster rolling rather than a big open plan tyre. But you say in sandy conditions specifically, so actually a wet weather tyre might be quite good. Something like this Vittoria Moto, just to give you an idea of what I mean by an open pattern tyre. It's kind of like a mud style tyre, but I guess it could work quite well in sandy conditions. Anyone else out there run in sort of super dry sandy conditions and have advice here for Graham? Please do jump in down there, be very helpful. Next up's from Karim. How important is it to run a foam insert on a hardtail, and which one do you recommend? I'm having an extremely difficult time selecting one. Can you help me? I guess it depends on how you ride, what you're planning on doing on the bike and what your tyres are on there. So for example, if you had downhill casing tyres or enduro casing tyres on the bike, you're less likely to need the support on the inside from a tyre insert. Of course, if you're an incredibly hard rider and you're buckling wheels and doing that stuff, then an insert is going to help against that as well. Whereas if you're running a cross-country style tyre at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, it will make a significant difference to the ride quality instantly if you use an insert on there. Now with inserts, there's loads of different options. There's lighter options. So Vittoria that we're partnered with, we use their ones, which are super lightweight foam options. I don't really use them on most bikes, to be fair. If I go to the Alps or somewhere a bit more mountainous, I'll definitely run them on the rear of the bike. On the cross-country bike, I run on front and rear now. I prefer the feel of the lighter weight tyres, and then I put an insert in there to give me a bit of support. I have tried running the heavier duty XT trail tyres, and to be honest, I just don't like the way they feel by comparison. I really like these ones. I mean, I'm running the risk there because I tend to ride sorts of trails that I can get punctures and things on, but I just prefer them. So if that sounds like you, they could be a good option. Now there's also a dual density option out there on the market from a company called Rimpact. Now these are very good. I've not ridden them myself, so I can't comment, but everyone that I know has used them have said they're really good. So dual density is a good thing. It means you've got suppleness, it means you've got support in there. And if you're really hard on components and you want something that really does protect your rim and keep that tyre on, then there's really only one option, and that would be Cushcore. Now Cushcore is a very high-end product. It's very expensive, and on certain rim and tyre combinations can be very difficult to fit. But once it's on, it's astonishing. It's almost like having volume spaces in your tyres. It gives your tyre a totally different feel, and that could be a great option for you out there. There's loads of videos. I think we've made some videos on Cushcore, and there'll be something floating around down there. Next up from Gabriel. I was wondering if you can help me. I've got a pair of old RockShox boxers and the low-speed compression knob has infinite clicks and does nothing. Could it be something loose inside the damper, or it's probably broken? I don't know, it depends how old it is, depends on the model. But more than likely what's happened is there tends to be some sort of circuit or a C-clip on the inside that holds that damper from spinning, essentially, when you're turning the compression adjuster. It sounds to me like the whole thing might be just turning. Hard to say without removing it. With your particular model there, all you need to do really is ring your local suspension service centre. In the UK, I often reference them. Someone like TF Tuned would be a good port of call. If you ring them up, they will know on that model, and they will know the typical problems that they've had over the years. You'd be astonished the amount of stuff and the amount of products that these guys and girls will know. It's unreal. So that's quite a specialist question, but I reckon it might be something like a C-clip on there that's just making things spin around on there. But hey, I don't know which model that is. So hopefully you can help and get that fixed up. And of course, because they're RockShox, just like with any of the major manufacturers like RockShox and Fox, it's easier to get spares, and not to suggest that it's easy for your particular model, but you should be able to get spares if there is anything broken internally with that damper. Next up from Christian, who says, I'm wondering if I can fit a through-axle rear wheel in a quick release frame. Nope, is the answer. Unless you're Sam Pilgrim and you want to fit things with lumps of wood and hammers and things, in which case you might be able to break a frame and get it in there. But unfortunately, you can't really convert it like that unless the frame has replaceable dropouts. There are a number on the market and you can replace the actual dropouts to take different style hubs, but I'm guessing yours probably doesn't, otherwise you wouldn't be asking this question. Next up from Christoph, can you slacken the head tube angle of your bike without changing travel of the fork? Yes, but not all of the methods I'm going to say will work with your bike. The first one is to choose an angled cup headset. There's loads of options on the market. Works Components make them. Some brands actually include them with bikes like Mondraker. And of course there's the Cane Creek angle set. There's various different options in different upper and lower cup configurations, and the amount you can slacken or steepen the head angle, but it has like a gimbal style system on there. Incredible piece of kit, but like I said, it doesn't fit with all head tubes on bikes. They used to have a configurator on their website, and you could actually see from the style of head tube you have if it will work. That would be my first port of call, because they really are excellent, and I think you can take off up to 2 degrees off your head angle with them if you want, or steepen by the same amount. Next one would be offset shock bushings. So basically the hardware for your rear shock, if you have one on your bike, tends to be you have the bushing kits, and there'll be a whole central. If you have those offset, that can basically move your bottom bracket height up or down, which in turn, as that's going up or down, will slacken or steepen your head angle. So that one will work. And of course, a larger front tyre. If you've got a 2.3 or a 2.4 currently on there, jump up to 2.6 or 2.5. And that will just bump up your front end that little bit more. Of course, you could run a little less sag in the front end, a little more sag in the rear end if you want to be extreme about things. That works well in when you're doing more biased riding towards downhill, but not necessarily for all-round stuff. Last one says, is it possible to have a stem that's too short? And if it is, how to know what are the signs? Yeah, 100%. So firstly, your fit on the bike won't be ideal. You'll be either feeling very cramped because the bars are close to you, or you'll be very, very upright on the bike. You don't really want to be in too upright position. You need to be in a bit more of a dynamic, aggressive position on a mountain bike to have good handling there. You could risk hitting your knees. Your knees might be very close to the bars. Look at other riders that their bikes look like good fits, and observe when they're riding by how close their knees are to the bars compared to yours. That will give you a good indication there. Your bike will feel very twitchy if it's very short. In the older days, people used to like shorter, smaller bikes because they thought the twitchiness meant you could throw them around. But well, I guess you could to a degree, but it also creates instability. You could say it's a good thing, because you get that with fly-by-wire fighter jets these days. They deliberately make them so they handle badly, so they can just do the most insane manoeuvres on them. Obviously, fly-by-wire, the computer technology makes them flyable, I guess. Very cool stuff, very nerdy. And the last one, of course, is when you're descending on steeper terrain, your weight is going to be naturally further off the back of the bike to get yourself in a good position. If your stem's too short, that's going to be accentuated. You're going to be much further back. And without a long front on the bike, i.e. you've made it all shorter, there's not going to be enough weight on the front end, so you'll understeer quite easily on the turns because you won't have a good balanced weight between your two wheels. There we go. That's pretty much the effects of running a short stem, or at least a stem that's too short on a bike that's arguably too small. There we go. That's enough for this show. Thank you, as always, for the support on the channel. You can get any questions you want down there. Just use that hashtag Ask GMBN Tech. Or if you've got anything else directed towards any of the presenters here, we can all get involved. Get involved down there, and we'll see you on the next show. Take care. See you later.